Previously on Stranger Things. The season opens with Mike, Dustin, Lucas and Will playing a game of Dungeons & Dragons and are fending off a monster they call the Demogorgon. However, on his way home, Will faces a monster of his own and is abducted. The next morning, Will's mum Joyce and his brother Jonathan realise he's not there and start to panic. At school, the boys also realise Will is missing while being bullied by a couple of mouth breathers. We then meet Mike's sister Nancy and her best friend Barb, who's concerned about Nancy's new relationship with the school heartthrob Steve. We're introduced to the local sheriff Jim Hopper, who Joyce talks to about Will's disappearance. Meanwhile, a local government facility is suiting up and venturing into an alien-looking gateway, and we learn that a young girl recently escaped the facility. Her name is Eleven. Eleven sneaks into a nearby diner for something to eat and makes friends with the owner of the establishment. We learn that Eleven has special abilities before the owner is murdered and Eleven escapes once again. The boys are told not to go looking for their friend as the search escalates. Joyce receives a shocking phone call from Will and the boys go looking for Will despite their warning but come across Eleven instead. They take Eleven home to Mike's house where she sleeps the night in the basement. Mike learns of the bad men coming after Eleven and Eleven learns the basics of modern life before recognising Will in one of Mike's pictures. In a flashback, we're showing the awful test that Eleven has been put through because of her powers, and the leader of the operation, Dr. Brenner, is seen as her fatherly figure who she calls Papa. The boys then learn of Eleven's powers as Hopper continues searching for Will, who Eleven explains is in a place known as the Upside Down, being held prisoner by the Demogorgon. Elsewhere, Nancy and Barb attend a party at Steve's parents' house, which Barb does not approve of. Nancy then ditches Barb before she is photographed by Jonathan and disappears into the night. Joyce receives shocking phone call number 2 and discovers that Will is talking to her through the electricity, and let's just say her household gets pretty lit. Hopper starts investigating the government facility and Nancy realises that Barb is missing. Joyce meanwhile makes progress contacting Will before the Demogorgon reveals itself to her. Hopper discovers the facility is caught up in multiple lawsuits, but all hope is soon lost when Will's dead body is recovered from a river. However, Eleven manages to tune into Will singing on Mike's walkie-talkie. Joyce and Jonathan identify Will's body, but Joyce refuses to believe the corpse is her son. The police start looking into Barb's disappearance and Nancy and Jonathan admit to each other that they saw a faceless creature the night Barb vanished. The boys prepare Eleven to be taken out in public and they all attend a school assembly for Will, where Eleven teaches the mouth breathers a lesson. Hopper starts to connect the dots and discovers Will's body is a fake. He breaks into the facility and discovers what is really going down there, then suddenly wakes up in his house where he finds a bug in his light fixture. Nancy and Jonathan go looking for the faceless creature and the kids go looking for the entrance to the Upside Down, which Eleven stops them from finding for their own safety. Nancy finds the entrance before confronting the Demogorgon, then is saved by Jonathan, who Steven is getting jealous of. After sabotaging the boys' plan, Eleven runs away and steals some Eggos, which is her favourite food, from a local grocery store. Hopper confirms Joyce's suspicions and they talk to a severely disabled woman who lost her daughter to the government facility. Nancy and Jonathan equip themselves to fight the Demogorgon before Jonathan is arrested for fighting Steve. Hopper and Joyce then team up with Nancy and Jonathan as they are looking for the same enemy. The boys have an encounter with their bullies which causes Mike to jump off a cliff. However, he is saved by Eleven, who returns and breaks the bully's arm. However, the bad men track down the children who are now on the run, and Eleven saves the day again by flipping one of their vans. Steve ends up being one of the good guys and Hopper finds the kids. Eleven tries to communicate with Will to no avail, however she thinks she could do it if her senses were blocked out and she was submerged in water. She then finds Barb's dead body and encourages Will to hold on a little longer. Meanwhile, Hopper and Joyce break into the facility to find Will before they are captured by security. Hopper then makes a deal with them to allow Joyce and him into the Upside Down. While in there, we see flashbacks of Hopper's daughter who died of cancer at a young age. Nancy, Jonathan and Steve lure the Demogorgon to the house and try to trap it, but fail. Mike confesses his true feelings for Eleven before the bad men arrive to take her away, but are interrupted by the Demogorgon who kills them all. Joyce finds Will on the brink of death, but Hopper resuscitates him. Eleven grows weak but uses her last ounce of strength to disintegrate the Demogorgon, taking her with it. Will recovers in hospital and Hopper is seen getting into a government vehicle. 1 month later and we again see the boys playing, but Mike still misses Eleven. Nancy ends up back with Steve and Will is still suffering from his experience in the Upside Down. Hopper is then seen leaving Eggos in the woods. We're first introduced to a girl who can make people see what she wants them to see, and she reveals a tattoo just like 11's. Mike, Dustin, Lucas and Will head down to their local arcade where they find a player named Mad Max has beaten their high score in Dig Dug, when suddenly Will experiences the Upside Down and witnesses something emerging in the sky before snapping out of his trance. Hopper is back at work and being pestered by a local conspiracy theorist who is starting to piece things together regarding 11 and the facility, but Hopper dismisses him to look into a local farmer's pumpkin patch that's been poisoned. We're introduced to Billy and his younger sister Max, who the boys discover is the notorious Mad Max who beat their high score. Joyce has a new boyfriend named Bob and is trying to get some answers about Will's recent episodes in the Upside Down. Dr. Owens is Will's specialist who also supervises the maintaining of the Upside Down gateway, preventing it from spreading. Nancy and Steve visit Barb's parents' house, who just hired a private investigator to help find their daughter, which overwhelms Nancy with guilt. Jonathan tries to cheer Will up before he has another episode and witnesses the Shadow Monster. Hopper retreats to a cabin in the woods where him and 11 are currently residing. 11 escaped the Upside Down and now Hopper won't let her leave the cabin in order to keep her safe. Joyce discovers Will's drawings and alerts Hopper, who is the only person she can trust. The boys are the only ones that dress up for Halloween but try to enlist Max into their group. We learn that her brother is bad news and he threatens to run the boys over with his car. Hopper looks further into the poison crops in the area and finds a pattern. Joyce and Bob fantasize about moving away to escape these events, and Nancy confesses to Steve that their relationship is bullshit. Meanwhile, 11 finds a way to communicate with Mike, and Dustin finds a little creature in his trash and calls him Dart. Not sure what it is, Dustin starts doing some research. Bob tells Will to stand up to the monsters that haunt him, and while one relationship blossoms, another ends. Tired of being cooped up in the cabin, 11 leaves in search of Mike and the gang, who are trying to figure out what Dart is. Will recognises it from the Upside Down and the group decide to destroy it, but Dustin has other ideas. 11 finds Mike and thinks he's falling for Max, so she makes Max fall instead. 11 has a meltdown, Will gets possessed, and Jonathan and Nancy decide to meet up with Barb's parents to tell them the truth. Little do they know they're being watched and are taken to the facility where they are warned against telling anyone about the town's impending doom. The Shadow Monster starts taking over Will's body and he starts drawing some sort of map. 11 finds newspaper clippings of a woman that is likely her mother, so she tries to communicate with her and learns her own real name is Jane. Nancy and Jonathan skip town in search of answers and Dart eats the family cat. Hopper discovers the cause of the crop poisoning, some upside down tunnels which try to consume him. Dart gets pucked and 11 goes looking for her mother and finds she is traumatized by the events that separated the two of them. Nancy and Jonathan meet up with the conspiracy theorist and they help each other fill in the blanks. Bob helps Joyce find Hopper and Will starts feeling the damage the facility is causing to the gateway. Dustin teams up with Steve to help kill Dart, but he's already escaped into the tunnels. Joyce gets fired up and so do John and Nancy. Hopper recovers after his experience and is shown the full scale of the upside down tunnels. The gang meet up at the junkyard to take care of these demo dogs, and Steve saves the day. The monster inside Will ambushes the workers in the tunnels, and 11 learns of her long-lost sister who was raised in the facility with her. Carly, aka 8, and her gang of vigilantes spend their time serving justice to those who have wronged them. 8 trains 11 to become more powerful and gives her a bitchin' makeover. 11 joins the dark side but remembers that her friends need her and returns to Hawkins. The demo dogs infiltrate the facility and our heroes are trapped inside. We learn why Billy is the way that he is, and Nancy and Jonathan return to help out back at the facility. Bob sacrifices himself so the rest can escape, and Dustin points out that the Shadow Monster displays traits of a Mind Flayer, which means that Will feels what it feels. The demo dogs return, but so does 11, and she's reunited with Mike, but there's some tension between her and Max, but a different type of tension between Billy and Mike's mum. 11 returns to the facility to end things once and for all. Max takes down Billy and the heat gets turned up on Will. The gang destroy the tunnels and demo dogs while 11 uses everything she has to finally close the door on the Upside Down. 1 month later and Barb is finally laid to rest and Hopper officially adopts 11. Back at school, everyone attends the snowball. Dustin strikes out twice before Nancy swoops in. Mike and 11 share a long-awaited kiss and all is well in Hawkins. At least for now. A Russian base is working on a super weapon to open up the gateway between our world and the Upside Down, and are near the point of success. Meanwhile, Mike and Eleven's relationship is going strong, much to the disgust of Hopper. The gang minus Dustin, who is at camp, meets up at Hawkins' brand new hotspot, Starcourt Mall, where we meet Steve's Scoops Ahoy work colleague, Robin. But we're interrupted by a citywide blackout caused by some suspicious underground activity, which also happens to disable magnets. Dustin gets a warm welcome back at home, but the heat's really getting turned up at the swimming pool. Hopper gets some advice from Joyce about Eleven's relationship with Mike, and Joyce recommends writing a heartfelt letter, which doesn't come naturally to Hopper. Nancy and Jonathan are struggling to find their way as interns for the local newspaper, and Dustin shows the newly reunited gang his high-tech radio transmitter, which he uses to communicate with his girlfriend he met at camp, which nobody believes. Mike gets under Hopper's skin, the letter is discarded, and Mike is kicked out and threatened to leave Eleven alone. With his transmitter, Dustin accidentally tunes into a secret Russian broadcast, and hears a secret code whilst Karen backs out of a date with Billy, who finds himself otherwise occupied. Eleven tries to meet up with Mike, but too scared to confront Hopper, Mike lies to get out of it, which makes a very happy Hopper, who scores a date with Joyce. The magnets stop working again, Nancy and Jonathan take their journalistic work into their own hands, and Eleven decides to hang out with Max instead. Billy is not his normal self after the night before, and Lucas's sister Erica stirs up trouble at Scoops Ahoy. The journalistic heroes go to see an old lady whose rats are behaving oddly familiar. Hopper has problems following the mayor's rules, and Eleven has problems following Hopper's rules of staying out of public. Concerned about the blackouts and magnets, Joyce seeks assistance from the one and only Mr. Clark. Eleven gets a new look and catches Mike in a lie, resulting in him getting dumped. Hopper is then stood up after Joyce is distracted by the magnets. Billy kidnaps one of his colleagues from the pool and brings her to the steel mill where he was previously taken, and Eleven accidentally stumbles across him whilst using her powers to spy on the boys. Will has trouble accepting that the group is growing up, and Joyce tries to explain to Hopper why she's been so distracted. Nancy's rat story gets turned down, Eleven learns of the girl Billy kidnapped, and Joyce and Hopper retrace their footsteps in the research lab from their last brush with the Upside Down. But someone is hot on their trail. Dustin, Steve and Robin figure out the meaning of the Russian code words and learn of a secret meeting, and the old lady with the rats has a secret of her own. Eleven and Max investigate Billy's strange behaviour, and it turns out everything's fine, or at least it appears that way before they bring more victims to the steel mill where a familiar creature is feeding, and the kids are noticing a familiar pattern. They decide to go after Billy and lure out the creature with what Will knows it hates: heat. A plan is hatched for the secret Russian meeting, and Erica's assistance is required to fit in the air duct to get there. Hopper learns the mayor is corrupt and obtains information on what is really going on, and Erica is successful in accessing the Russian meeting place. This meeting place, however, turns out to be a major operation being performed underneath Hawkins. The kids corner Billy in a sauna, and Eleven fights the monster inside of Billy. The kids escape, but the people of Hawkins aren't so lucky. Dustin and gang attempt to find a way out of this newfound base, while Joyce and Hopper try to find a way in and kidnap the Russian scientist Dr. Alexei. But as usual, someone is right behind them. Joyce tries to get information out of Alexei without success, and they try to find their way back to town. Steve and friends find a way out of the elevator of the Russian base, and Alexei finds his way to 7-Eleven. The kids discover what Billy has been up to, and Hopper and friends enlist the help of conspiracy theorist Murray, who turns out was pretty accurate with his conspiracies. The kids go to the hospital where the old rat lady was kept to learn more, but the creature is feeding too fast. In the Russian base, the gang discovers the upside down super weapon and then try to escape, but Robin and Steve are captured. Eleven fights the creature in the hospital and it retreats underground to feed. The kids plan, the adults plan, and Dustin and Erica plan to rescue Robin and Steve, who are being drugged and interrogated by the Russians. Using her powers to find Billy, Eleven gets a peek inside his memories, which are now shrouded in darkness, and they lead her to the steel mill where the creature is growing stronger by the minute. At the fun fair, the town of Hawkins is celebrating, oblivious to the looming danger right on their doorstep. Dustin and Erica find Steve and Robin, who are rendered useless due to the drugs, and they finally find an exit. The creature comes for Eleven and her leg is badly wounded. In search for the kids, the adults head to the fair, and Murray draws attention to the sexual tension between Joyce and Hopper, and finds a friend in Alexei. The kids go to a nearby store to plan how to defeat the creature. Dustin finally makes contact with the rest of the kids, whilst Robin and Steve get the drugs out of their system. Steve confesses he likes Robin, and Robin explains he's barking up the wrong tree. Meanwhile, at the fair, whilst Joyce and Hopper search for the kids, Murray shows Alexi the fun that can be had at a carnival. Hopper, Joyce and Murray narrowly manage to escape the fair. In her usual fashion, 11 saves the day. However, the wound in her leg overcomes her and she discovers a part of the creature is inside her and she must remove it. The gang is then reunited and learn the Russian superweapon needs to be shut down to close the gate between the two worlds. It's Hopper, Joyce and Murray's turn to go underground and Dustin's transmitter is used to talk to them. Murray goes deeper inside the base to destroy the weapon from the inside out, but time is running out. Since 11 removed the creature from her leg, her telekinetic powers are now gone, and the creature now knows where they are. Whilst waiting for Murray, Joyce and Hopper open up about their feelings towards one another. Murray tries to sabotage the super weapon and the kids try to escape the mall, but are thwarted by Billy. Well, nearly. It turns out Dustin really does have a girlfriend. Billy comes for 11 and presents her to the creature, but the gang distracts it with fireworks. To destroy the superweapon once and for all, 2 people are needed. However, Hopper is delayed fighting the Russian henchmen. 11 reminds Billy of who he really is by showing him the memories she saw. The Byers household decides to move away, and a powerless 11 is going with them. Mike and 11 share a final kiss before Joyce hands over Hopper's discarded letter for her to read. Meanwhile, in Russia, the Russians have prisoners being held in cells, taking them out and feeding them to an all too familiar creature. In a flashback to 1979, we see Dr. Brenner getting ready to go to work at Hawkins' lab, which is occupied by many children who have extraordinary powers. But something goes wrong and Brenner wakes up to find mangled bodies everywhere with only one person left standing, 11. Jumping forward to 1986 in Lenora Hills, California, Will, 11, Jonathan and their new friend Argyle are settling into their new surroundings, under the watchful eye of Joyce, who has started a job working from home. Though it is soon apparent that 11 is not fitting in quite as well as everyone else and is consistently picked on by other kids. However, 11 doesn't let Mike know any of this in the letters they're sending each other. Mike remains in Hawkins with Nancy and the rest of the gang. Dustin is staying in touch with his long-distance girlfriend Susie, along with Steve, Robin, Max and Lucas, who are all returning for another school year. Lucas has joined the basketball team and has befriended the team captain Jason and his group of jock friends. During a basketball game, Jason professes his love for his girlfriend Chrissy, and Robin appears to have feelings for fellow band member Vicky. After the game, Lucas chooses a basketball game over the Dungeons & Dragons meeting known as the Hellfire Club, leaving Mike and Dustin one player short. Things are also awkward between Lucas and Max. Max hears Chrissy in the bathroom being sick, and we see that Chrissy is experiencing hallucinations of the Upside Down. Or are they? We meet the leader of the Hellfire Club, Eddie Munson, who is no friend of the jocks. Nancy is busy working on a newspaper with fellow reporter Fred. Chrissy leaves school grounds and heads into the forest, where she sees a grandfather clock extruding out of a tree, but is interrupted by Eddie, who is selling her drugs, much to his surprise as she is a model student. Back in California, 11's bullying is escalating and leads to 11 attempting to use her powers against the main bully, Angela, leading to further ridicule. Joyce receives a suspicious parcel in the mail which contains a Russian doll. Unsure what to do, she calls Murray for advice, who tells her there's probably something inside the doll. Scared that it may be dangerous, Joyce smashes the doll open from a distance and finds a note inside saying Hopper is alive. Mike and Dustin found their third player in Lucas's sister Erica, and during the D&D session the players are introduced to a villain named Vecna, who the players defeat whilst Lucas's team wins the basketball game. But Lucas doesn't have his usual friend group around him anymore, and spends the night partying with the jocks. Meanwhile, at Max's home she sees Eddie meeting Chrissy, who becomes possessed by an unknown creature who puts her in a trance. Eddie yells for Chrissy to wake up, but it's too late. The next day, police arrive at the scene and speak to Eddie's uncle, and there is no sign of Eddie anywhere, just Chrissy's mangled body. In California, Mike comes to visit 11, and there's an awkward tension between him and Will, but Mike isn't the only one coming to town. Lucas is feeling sorry for himself after partying too hard the night before, and the police arrive to talk to Jason. News of the apparent murder has reached Nancy and Fred, who decide to investigate, and Max talks to Dustin about what she saw the night before and Eddie running away. Dustin, being close friends with Eddie, doesn't believe that he could be the murderer and that there must be more to the story. Murray starts working with Joyce on figuring out the ransom note she received, and we see that Hopper survived the explosion and has since been tortured in a Russian prison. Mike, 11 and Will decide to go roller skating, and 11 is continuing to keep up the facade that she is fitting in with the kids from school, much to Will's dismay. The police tell Jason what has happened to his girlfriend Chrissy, and he wants vengeance. Dustin and Max recruit Steve and Robin and fill them in on what they think is going on. They then get to work on finding where Eddie may be. On their way to the crime scene, Fred starts experiencing some all too familiar hallucinations. 11's lies about the other kids from school begin to unravel as Angela publicly humiliates her, revealing the truth to Mike. Joyce and Murray decide to call the number on the ransom note, which is answered by a prison guard named Enzo, who asks for money for Hopper's release. The jocks begin planning their revenge on the primary suspect, Eddie, and the military begins an investigation of their own. Robin figures out a way to locate Eddie, and Nancy interviews Eddie's uncle, who mentions the similarities of the events to what happened to a family called the Creels. Nearby, Fred's hallucinations are worsening. The tension rises between Will and Mike, and it all becomes too much for 11, who attacks Angela for what she's done. Max and company find Eddie in an old boat shed and fill them in on what they know and how this could have happened. Fred is overcome by this unknown creature who appears all too familiar to the kids, a real-life Vecna, who resides in the attic of a house in the Upside Down surrounded by demobats. The military pays Dr. Owens a visit, as 11 has had a similar MO in the past, and is likely to have more information, which he does not share. After a traumatic time at the skate rink, the kids return home and are greeted by Murray, and 11 is reminded of the massacre at Hawkins' lab. Lucas finds himself caught up in the Jock's plan to track down Eddie, who is still hiding out with the gang in the boat shed. Nancy is questioned about the events surrounding Fred's death before joining the rest of the gang to figure out how all this could happen. Mike and Eleven fight as she feels she's nothing without her powers, and Mike disagrees, Eleven then pointing out the fact that he never says that he loves her, but then the police arrive and take Eleven away for assaulting Angela. Nancy is filled in on what is known so far, and Max recalls seeing Chrissy in the bathroom before her death. The gang split up to find out more information, and Nancy and Robin go to investigate the lead they have on the Creel family. Meanwhile, Vecna is on the prowl for more victims, and ominous gateways are appearing at the crime scenes. Jason starts threatening Eddie's friends to find out where he is, and Eleven is processed at the police station before being taken away in a transport vehicle. Joyce and Murray fly to Russia in their quest to save Hopper, who is planning an escape of his own. Lucas sneaks away from the Jocks and warns Dustin of what they're planning to do to Eddie, and Eleven's transport is intercepted by Dr. Owens. Nancy and Robin review old newspaper clippings to see if there's any resemblance to what is going on, and find a reference to the Creel family. Victor Creel, the father of the family, is currently locked away in an asylum following the supernatural events that occurred to his family. Dr. Owens fills in Eleven on what's going on in Hawkins and how they need to try to get her powers back for her to save the world once again. But time is running out as now Max is starting to experience hallucinations. Will, Jonathan and Mike are put under protection due to the dangers they may be facing, and 2 armed guards are posted in their house. Lucas catches up with Dustin and joins the crew in their investigation. Nancy and Robin fill them in on their findings, deciding they're going to visit Victor Creel in the asylum. Meanwhile, Max's hallucinations are starting to worsen. In Russia, we are introduced to Yuri, who agrees to assist them in their search for Hopper, who has made plans of his own with the prison guard Enzo. Victor Creel tells the story of his nightmares that surrounded the family, which ultimately led to the death of his wife and daughter, briefly mentioning that hearing a familiar song during the hallucinations managed to bring him back to reality. Will, Jonathan and Mike are attacked and their guards are overcome. They make a quick escape with one of the injured guards in Argyle's van. Yuri explains his plan to Joyce and Murray whilst Hopper hides away in a nearby building, but he is promptly caught and Yuri is revealed to have betrayed them to take them to the KGB. The gang goes to the cemetery for Max to visit Billy's grave, but when Steve goes to check on her, she has been possessed by Vecna and trapped inside the nightmare he's created. Robin contacts Dustin and lets him know that music may help break the curse, and they desperately attempt to snap Max out of the trance. The music playing reminds her of happier times and assists her in breaking free of Vecna's grasp. Still on the run, the guard passes away in the back of Argyle's van, and the military, finding letters between Mike and Eleven, are hot on their tail. Eleven is taken to a compound in Nevada where she's taken underground and introduced to the Nina Project, which is their attempt at returning Eleven's powers, but the project is run by an all too familiar face. Traumatised by memories of Dr. Brenner, or Papa as she calls him, Eleven attempts to escape but is incapacitated. Elsewhere, Hopper is brought back to the compound with now disgraced prison guard Enzo, and Yuri attempts to fly Joyce and Murray to the KGB. Max tries to remember details of what she saw whilst in Vecna's trance, and they piece together what appears to be the Creel household. Eleven awakes to find herself in a memory from her childhood in the facility, and we are introduced to one of the orderlies, Peter, who seems to be her only ally in Hawkins' lab. It is then revealed that Eleven is reliving her memories of her time in Hawkins' lab from inside the Nina device, which is being monitored by Dr. Brenner and Dr. Owens. The crew in the van has no choice but to bury the body of the guard in the desert, and Will seems to have something to say to Mike. The Hawkins crew arrive at the Creel house to see what they can find, and Lucas and Max's relationship sees a flicker of hope, but that's not the only thing that's flickering in this house. The kids at Hawkins' labs are being tested to determine the strength of their powers, and Eleven finds herself continuing to have flashbacks of the events of the massacre. In Russia, Joyce and Murray overpower Yuri and get a crash course in flying a plane. At the Creel house, the crew investigate the flickering lights and determine that Vecna is likely nearby in the Upside Down. Vecna is otherwise occupied though, as he has his sights set on his next victim. The jocks have now caught up with Eddie, who is making his escape in a rowboat, but before they can catch him, one of the jocks is possessed and killed, opening another gateway under the water. 11 awakes and attempts to make another escape, this time with explosive consequences. But Dr. Brenner reminds her of the importance for her to be there, and she agrees to continue with the experiment. The military, meanwhile, are becoming increasingly desperate to get their hands on 11. The police begin investigating the death on the lake, and the crew informs Eddie that he is likely to be blamed again. And they would be correct, as Jason tries to get the whole town involved on his Munson hunt. The van crew think of an idea to track 11 down and locate Susie, who gives them some coordinates. Joyce and Murray rethink their plan and hide out with Yuri as their captive. 11 has just as much luck with the kids in Hawkins' lab as she did with the kids in California, but cannot shake the images of their dead bodies. The Hawkins crew head to the lake to see if they can find any further leads, and Steve gets pulled into the underwater gateway, trapping him in the Upside Down. He is promptly joined by Eddie, Nancy and Robin, who help him to fight off Vecna's demo bats before venturing further into the unknown. Murray sneaks into the Russian base, pretending Joyce and Yuri are the Americans they were promised, and they witness Hopper and his fellow prisoners preparing to face a familiar foe. Dustin, Lucas and Erica try to find a way to get Steve and company out of the Upside Down, who have meanwhile figured out a way to use light to communicate. They think of a way they could escape by having them meet at one of the gateways that have opened, and both crews head there immediately. In Hawkins' lab, Peter befriends 11 and lets her in on the secret to escaping the lab. Hopper and Enzo face the Demogorgon, but Murray takes one of the guards hostage to force them to save them. Once safe, Hopper turns around to find Joyce waiting for him. In the Upside Down, both crews meet up at the gateway, whilst 11 and Peter's escape plan is foiled, but Peter is not who he appears to be. Those in the Upside Down climb out of there, but Nancy is caught just before she can escape, and finds herself an observer in Vecna's memories, showing that the child of Victor Creel was the cause of the events that occurred to them, leaving Victor the one being blamed. 11 follows Peter through the lab and now sees the true reason the massacre occurred. 11 tries to stop Peter, who fights back but ultimately is overcome by 11, who banishes him to the Upside Down, and Vecna's true identity is revealed. Those that escape the Upside Down desperately try to get Nancy back, who narrowly escapes Vecna before waking up. In Russia, Hopper, Joyce, Murray and Enzo regroup and try to find a way out of the prison, whilst the Demogorgon is on the prowl. While searching the prison, they find other creatures from the Upside Down that are being kept on the premises, before they find a way out. 11's powers have officially returned thanks to the revelation she had about her past and Vecna. Meanwhile, Jonathan, Argyle, Mike and Will are headed to the coordinates they were given. On their way, Will gives Mike a painting he has been working on, which represents Mike being the hero of the group, and that everyone stands behind him. Will's feelings appear to be deeper than what he's letting on, and he's not telling Mike the whole truth. Nancy tells the gang what she saw whilst in Vecna's mind, and 11 now has the ability to telepathically see what the group is doing and saying. The Russian crew finally escapes the prison, and they force Yuri to help them escape the country, as he has another aircraft that may be able to help them. In Hawkins, the gang realise they're going to need more firepower to face Vecna and steal an RV to head to a gun store. On the way, Steve confesses that he has always had feelings for Nancy, despite their complicated history. And Lucas and Max are slowly warming to each other. Yuri reveals his aircraft is actually a worn-down helicopter that is unlikely to get them anywhere, let alone out of the country, but Yuri promises to get it fixed up in no time. At the gun store, Robin sees a friendly face in Vicky, but is hurt by seeing her with a guy. Nancy, however, sees a not-so-friendly face as Jason is there, and threatens the group before they make a quick getaway and prepare for war. In Nevada, the group finds tracks which may lead to 11, but they're not the only ones that have found the location. Wanting to save her friends in Hawkins, 11 tries to leave the facility again, but is stopped by Dr. Brenner. She wakes up back in her room in the facility, which is now being breached by the military. Dr. Owens is taken captive and Dr. Brenner takes 11 out a back exit and into the Nevada desert. However, they're spotted by a military helicopter and Brenner is shot down. Just before shooting 11, Argyle's van is spotted heading their way to rescue 11, but it would appear she does not need much help. 11 is reunited with the group and says her last goodbyes to Papa, before narrowly escaping the military. Back in Hawkins, the crew is split up in their plan to defeat Vecna. Max, Erica and Lucas head into the Creel house. Meanwhile, Yuri is secretly sabotaging the repair of the helicopter. Joyce, Murray and Hopper decide to have Enzo force Yuri to complete the repairs, whilst they return to the facility to destroy the remaining upside-down creatures, as they have a hive mind and doing so would benefit the world and give the kids a better chance at winning. The rest of the Hawkins gang, Steve, Nancy, Dustin, Robin and Eddie, head into the Upside Down whilst 11 thinks of an idea to help with Vecna. By telepathically travelling there through Max's memories, all she needs is a salt bath to do so. At the Creel house, they are using lanterns to help hunt Vecna whilst Jason is hunting them. Argyle thinks of a way to make a makeshift salt bath at the local Surfer Boy pizza franchise, and Eddie and Dustin prepare to make a big enough distraction for Vecna's demo bats to leave Vecna vulnerable. And Eddie thinks of just the thing. Max and Lucas decide to go on a date once this is all over before being interrupted by Vecna. With the salt bath complete, 11 telepathically finds Max in the Creel house, who has fallen victim once again to Vecna's curse. 11 enters Max's memories to try and find where she has gone. Eddie performs a face-melting guitar solo which does exactly what they'd planned it to do. As Nancy, Steve and Robin enter the Creel house in the Upside Down, the jocks finally catch up to Erica, Lucas and Max, who is being stalked by Vecna and now trapped in her memory of the snowball. Back in the Russian prison, they find all the creatures have now escaped, as parts of the Upside Down have leaked into the facility and resuscitated them, making them a lot more difficult to eliminate. In Max's memory, 11 finds a table out of place belonging to the snowball, which leads her to believe that that's where Max is. Jason arrives at the attic and accuses Lucas of harming Max, as she's unresponsive. Hopper and Joyce say their goodbyes as Hopper goes to face the Upside Down creatures, and the vines in the Upside Down trap the trio in the Creel house. Dustin and Eddie prepare to fight the demo bats before making their escape, but Eddie decides to stay behind to lure them away from the gateway. Lucas and Erica attempt to fight off the jocks, and Vecna arrives at the snowball to meet Max, but they're not alone. Eddie lures the bats away as far as possible and Dustin re-enters the Upside Down to assist him, and Eddie stands his ground. 11 fights Vecna but is thrown into his memories alongside Max. Vecna tells the story of how he came to do the Mind Flayer's bidding before taking hold of Max. It was time to defeat Vecna once and for all. Hopper, Joyce and Murray are picked up by Yuri and Enzo, and Dustin finds Eddie, who is overcome by the bats. But he didn't run away this time. The Upside Down is opening and kills Jason in the process. Hawkins has fallen. The entire group is reunited and Max is seen recovering in hospital from her injuries. Everyone goes to help out with the unfortunate citizens of Hawkins, and Robin and Vicky get a chance to talk. Dustin tells Eddie's uncle that he's not coming home, and the story of bravery that led to his death. Back at Hopper's cabin, Eleven is visited by someone she thought to be dead. But all is not well in Hawkins. And now is the beginning of the end.